Do you want the good news or the bad news? Well, the good news is a study by the Commons Women and Equalities Committee seeks to combat the appalling scourge of sexual harassment and abuse of female pupils and staff in our schools. This follows the introduction of a new relationships and sex education curriculum, teaching students, and particularly boys, about consent, sexting and pornography. It's a total priority that girls at school should be free to learn and feel safe and not suffer at the hands of misogynistic boys. Which is why I'm against those dangerous and dystopian unisex toilets in schools, which are bad news for female pupils. There are now reports of girls not going to the toilet all day long because they know that boys will be in there when they go. And it's a disaster for girls and women, frankly, and the whole of society, that things like pornography is now so normalised and its use so widespread. We've entered the nightmare scenario in which impressionable young boys are learning about the facts of life and receiving sex education from brutal, offensive and at times abusive scenes of copulation. Most of pornography is distasteful. I wonder how consensual some of it is. And in many ways, all of it is dangerous. But young boys can call up any of this filth on their smartphone or computer, often sharing it with their mates and having a right laugh about it. Pornography is acted, it's manipulative, it's fake. And in particular, it lies about female sexuality, somehow suggesting through its twisted storylines and imagery that women enjoy being brutalised or debased. God, it's awful. But this is shaping how many young boys think about sex and how they think about girls. I wish we could put the genie back in the bottle, but we can't. Pornography is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I doubt any amount of censorship or trigger warnings will make it go away. So it's right that in schools, teachers will educate both boys and girls about how misleading and dangerous so much of this porn actually is. I'm delighted to say that there are now lots of macho male influencers online. You know, the kind of guys who tell you how to get a six-pack or make your first million. Well, they often say that along with a good night's sleep, a good diet and working hard, that men should avoid porn altogether. That is fantastic, positive messaging. Just to give you an example of how damaging this material is for our society and for girls, I'm afraid cases of women turning up in hospital with, and there's no other word for this, anal injuries, has skyrocketed in recent years. Why? Well, because activity of that nature is normalised and glorified online, which means boys in the real world now expect it. So I applaud educators for getting on top of this, the horrible genre of pornography, which is so-called entertainment. I wouldn't seek to cancel it, that wouldn't work anyway, but it's good to help young lads understand the problems with porn and why it will affect them as well as everyone else. But here's the bad news. Setting aside all I've said and making it clear that sexism and misogyny are an outrage, I believe that in a wider sense, society risks overcorrecting in its war on so-called toxic masculinity. Men are being vilified and attacked for being men. Male attributes are characterised as aggressive, destructive and something to be ashamed of. And here's the thing, God or nature or whoever our higher power was knew exactly what they were doing. We have men and we have women and they have different qualities and different attributes. That's a good, not a bad thing. So current woke efforts to feminise mankind doesn't end well. Male suicide is already the biggest killer of men under 40, partly because it just feels like a crime to be a bloke these days. The honest truth is that men are aggressive. Men do fight, but they also pioneer and innovate and lead. Men at their best are compassionate but tough, caring but brave, empathetic but fearless and bold. And men do a lot of the jobs that no one else does. Fixing motorways at 4 in the morning in blizzard conditions, clearing sewers with their bare hands, mining, working on oil rigs and building skyscrapers. And although women make a huge contribution to our armed forces, through history and to this day, it's still predominantly men who have risked their lives and given their lives in war. We wouldn't be where we are as a species if it wasn't for the Herculean efforts of both genders, who are both indispensable. But toxic masculinity came in pretty useful in 1938, when Hitler rampaged across Europe and when German bombs rained over London. It's ironic that in this day and age, you're allowed to identify however you like, except as a real man. Calling yourself a cat is preferable, apparently. Yes, much of what the online influencer Andrew Tate says is not my cup of tea. He drops some valuable truth bombs, but he's a horrible sexist as well. But he deserves a voice. Why do millions of men flock to him and his message? Well, because they feel accepted for who they are and what they are, the male of the species, warts and all, for better or worse. They feel forgiven for being men. Fix misogyny, absolutely, and tackle porn, we must. But let boys be boys. Born with a schlong isn't wrong.